There's one shadow work question that, if you answer it honestly, will show you exactly what your midlife transition is asking you to integrate. Most people avoid this question because the answer is uncomfortable. But that discomfort, that's the whole point. Your discomfort is pointing you towards the part of yourself you exiled decades ago. And in midlife, those parts are demanding to be seen. So if you're ready to understand what your shadow actually is and why you're judging people more harshly in your 40s than you did in your 20s, watch this. The question is simple. What quality do I judge most harshly in others? Not what annoyed you once. What quality makes you want to distance yourself from someone? What quality, when you see it in someone else, makes you think, I would never want to be like that? Think about it for a second. Who do you judge? What kind of people do you find yourself criticizing? Are you someone who can't stand needy people? Who thinks they're weak? Are you someone who judges selfish people? Who thinks they're self-absorbed? Are you someone who can't stand lazy people? Who thinks they're unmotivated? Are you someone who judges people who are emotional? Who thinks they're too much? Or people who are closed off? Who thinks they're cold? The specific quality doesn't matter, but the intensity of your judgment does. Because your judgment is pointing you directly to your shadow. That's what we're going to talk about today. Carl Jung said something I think about constantly. What we resist persists. What we deny in ourselves, we project onto others. This is the mechanism of the shadow. You can't see the parts of yourself you've exiled. They're unconscious. So instead of seeing them in yourself, you see them in other people. And you judge them harshly. Why harshly? Because part of you is afraid of becoming that. Think about it. If you judge needy people, there's a part of you that's needy. A part of you had to exile because being needy got you rejected. If you judge selfish people, there's a part of you that's selfish. A part of you had to exile because being selfish got you punished. If you judge lazy people, there's a part of you that wants to rest. A part you had to exile because resting meant you were worthless. Now here's the thing. The more intense your judgment, the more disowned the part. If someone's neediness mildly annoys you, it's minor shadow material. But if you can't stand needy people, if you feel disgust when you see someone ask for help, if you judge them as weak or pathetic, that's major shadow material. That's a big part of yourself you exile. And that intensity of judgment, that's your psyche telling you, this is important, this matters, this needs to be integrated. Here's why this matters in midlife specifically. So in the first half of life, from birth until your late 30s, you had to build a self that worked. You had to figure out who you needed to be to get love, approval, safety, success. And to build that self, you had to exile a lot of other parts. Let me give you some examples. If you became the independent one, your caregivers were unpredictable, or they needed you to be strong, or being vulnerable got you dismissed. So you learned early, don't need anything, don't ask for help, be self-sufficient. You exiled neediness, and you built a self that could survive alone. That worked. It kept you safe. It earned you admiration. But it also meant you couldn't access intimacy, support, connection, because those required vulnerability and need. If you became the good one, your caregivers punished anger, or conflict meant the family falling apart, or being assertive got you abandoned. So you learned, don't be angry, don't say no, keep the peace. You exiled anger, and you built a self that was easy, accommodating, nice. That worked. It kept the peace. It earned you belonging. But it also meant you couldn't access boundaries, authenticity, your own desires, because those require anger and assertion. If you became the productive one, your worth was tied to what you did, or you got attention through achievement, or resting meant being criticized. So you learned always be doing, always be accomplishing. Rest is laziness. You exiled rest, and you built a self that was driven, successful, impressive. That worked. It got you accolades. It earned you status. But it also meant you couldn't access peace, present, just being, because those require rest. Now fast forward to your 40s. You've built this life on the back of these exiled parts. You've been performing this self for 20, 30, 40 years. And in midlife, your psyche says, enough. We need to integrate now. Your nervous system starts dysregulating. Your old strategies stop working. You start noticing things you never noticed before. And you start judging people more. Why? Because your shadow is getting louder. It's demanding attention. You might start judging needy people because your own neediness is surfacing. You might start judging selfish people because your own suppressed selfishness is surfacing. You might start judging lazy people because your own need for rest is surfacing. And you don't understand why. You think, why am I being so judgmental? This isn't like me, but it is like you. It's the parts of you that have been exiled that are screaming to be seen. Your increased judgment isn't a character flaw, it's an invitation. It's your psyche saying, look at what you're judging so harshly. That's what you need to integrate. So here's how you actually work with this. First of all, it's to identify your judgment. So what quality do you judge most harshly in others? Be honest, not what annoys you, but what makes you feel contempt or disgust or distance. And then ask yourself, when did I learn this quality was bad? Go back to your childhood. When did you first learn that this quality was wrong? Maybe a parent criticized it. Maybe a sibling got punished for it. Maybe you were rejected for displaying it. Sit with that memory and feel into it. And then ask, what did I get by exiling this part? So what did you gain by shutting this part down? Was it independence, approval, safety, belonging, status? There was a real payoff. That's why you exiled it. And now, what's asking you to keep it exiled? What are you missing? What can't you access? If you exile neediness, you can't ask for help, and you're chronically alone. If you exiled anger, you can't set boundaries. You're chronically resentful. If you exiled rest, you can't be present. So you're chronically exhausted. What's the cost of keeping this part exiled? Then meet it. Don't fix it. Don't become it. Just meet it. This is the actual shadow work. You're not trying to become needy or selfish or lazy. You're just acknowledging. Part of me has this capacity. Part of me needs this. That's human. You might say to yourself, part of me needs support. That's not weakness. I'm human. Part of me wants to be selfish sometimes, and that's not bad. It's actually healthy. Part of me wants to rest. That's not laziness. It's necessary. Just that acknowledgement. That's the beginning of integration. You don't have to act on it every single time. You don't have to become a different person. You just have to stop pretending the part doesn't exist. And when you do that, when you stop exiling the part and start including it, something shifts. You judge other people less because you're no longer trying to destroy them for having what you're terrified of in yourself. So you become softer, not weaker, but softer. You become more real, not broken, but more real. That's integration. So let me walk you through a full example so you see how this actually works. Let's say you judge needy people. You think they're weak. You find yourself distancing from them. So step one, you identify. I judge needy people. Step two, you ask, when did I learn this was bad? Maybe you remember I was about 8. I asked my mom for help with something small, and she said, stop being so needy. You need to be more independent. Or maybe it was your dad who was emotionally unavailable, and you learned early that asking for anything got dismissed. Or maybe it was a sibling who was labeled the needy one and got mocked for it. You feel into that memory. You feel the shame. And then, what did you identify by exiling neediness? Well, you got independence, you got approval, you got safety because you didn't have to depend on anyone who might have left you or rejected you. So you built a self that could survive alone. That was powerful. But what is it costing you now? So you can't ask for help. You're carrying weight alone that you could share. You can't let people get close. You're performing strength instead of being real. You might be chronically lonely, not socially, but emotionally. You're alone even in relationships. So now you meet it. You might say, part of me needs support. Part of me wants to ask for help without shame. Part of me wants to be vulnerable with safe people. That's human, that's not weak. And you don't have to become dependent. You don't have to change your whole life. You just have to stop exiling that part and pretending it doesn't exist. And when you do that, something shifts. You stop judging needy people so harshly because you're not trying to destroy the evidence of what you're terrified of in yourself. You might even develop compassion for them. And you might start asking for help in small ways, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming whole. So this question, what quality do I judge most harshly in others, is the beginning of shadow work. But shadow work isn't something you need to do alone. You need space to be witnessed. You need someone trained to hold the material as it surfaces. That's why I created my 5-session depth coaching arc. We use your birth chart to map where your shadow lives, and then we do this work together. But if you want to start with the bigger picture, the psychological framework, the astrological transits, the nervous system reality of what you're experiencing, I have a free 30-minute masterclass, What Your Midlife Crisis is Actually Trying to Tell You. It covers Jung's individuation, the 3 major midlife transits, and why your psyche is demanding integration right now. Link is in the description. And let me know in the comments, what quality do you judge most harshly in others?